welcome to Footprints, TorontoTV's newest travel show. I'm your host, Anita. Today we're going to be taking a look at the American state of Louisiana. But before I do that, I'd like to share with you some vacation videos that I took while in Alaska. If you tuned in 2 weeks ago, you'll remember that I did a segment on Alaska, but due to technical difficulties, I was unable to show you the videos. But now, here they are, so you can take a look. So this first video is of my sister and I on a bridge overlooking the Alaskan wilderness. You can see our footsteps, and you'll see that we're looking over the Alaskan wilderness, and there's many forest, underbrush, and actually while we were up there we encountered a bear down below, so you can see the beauty, but we were very high up, as you can see. We're wearing helmets and a lot of professional gear, and we were with professionals leading the way. So this was one of the most exciting experiences that I've ever had, and I highly suggest that you do it when you if you ever embark on a trip to Alaska. And the next video I will be sharing with you is this one, so please take a look. It's of my sister and I going on something called zipping through the Alaskan wilderness, and I'll explain a little bit about that after the video. So that was a video of my sister and I zipping, and the first two scenes you see myself zipping forward and then zipping back. So what's occurring there is that we're on this little line, and we're hooked onto it, and we just kind of lift up our feet and we kind of go above hundreds or thousands of feet perhaps above the Alaskan wilderness, and it's actually very beautiful scenic views, so I highly suggest that if you ever get the opportunity to go to Alaska, that you do so. And the last section of that video was kind of, I wanted to provide you, the audience, sort of first person's perspective of how zipping was, which is why I was holding the camera as I was going along. So now, moving on from one U.S. state to another, we're going to take a look at Louisiana. So Louisiana, USA. So first of all, we're going to talk a bit about Louisiana's basics. So, Louisiana is a southern state of the United States of America. It is bordered by Mississippi on the east, the Gulf of Mexico on the south, Texas on the west, and Arkansas on the north. Louisiana was named after Louis XIV, which is one of France's greatest and most powerful kings. So when René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de la Salle, claimed the territory drained by the Mississippi River for France, he named it La Louisiane, which means Land of Louis, named after Louis XIV. Louisiana's capital is Baton Rouge, and its most populous city is New Orleans. And currently, Louisiana sits at a population of approximately a little over 4 million people. So if you refer back to my PowerPoint and take a look at the map I showed, you can see Texas is on the west, Mississippi is on the east, Arkansas north, and Gulf of Mexico south. And if you look at the star, you'll see that Baton Rouge is the capital, and New Orleans is in big font as it's the most populous city. So moving on to a little bit of Louisiana's history, let me tell you a bit about the Hernando de Soto. So Hernando de Soto was one of the many discoverers who embarked to Louisiana. So Louisiana was initially inhabited by North Americans when European explorers arrived in the 17th century. So many place names in the state are transliterations of Native American dialects. And the first European explorers to visit Louisiana came in 1528. The Spanish expedition located the mouth of the Mississippi River, and in 1541, Hernando de Soto, the photograph of the gentleman that you saw in my PowerPoint presentation, his expedition crossed the region, but eventually Spanish interest in Louisiana lay dormant, and less Spanish explorers traveled to the region. So if you refer to my PowerPoint, you will see a photo of Hernando de Soto, and he's one of the many Spanish explorers to discover Louisiana. So one of the next explorers is Napoleon Bonaparte, and I will be telling you a little bit about this. So in the late 17th century, French expeditions, which included sovereign, religious, and commercial aims, established a foothold on the Mississippi River and Gulf Coast. With its first settlements, France laid claim to a vast region of North America and set out to establish a commercial empire and French nation stretching from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada. So in 1800, Francis Napoleon Bonaparte, the picture of whom you saw in my PowerPoint presentation, acquired Louisiana from Spain in the Treaty of San Ildefonso. Then in 1803, Bonaparte sold the territory to the United States in what is famously known as the Louisiana Purchase, which is divided Louisiana into two territories. First of all, the territory of New Orleans, which eventually became Louisiana and was admitted into the United States of America as the 18th state on April 30th, 1812. And the second territory was the District of Louisiana, which eventually would become Missouri. So this is a picture of Napoleon Bonaparte right here. So in the American Civil War, Louisiana seceded from the Union on January 26, 1861, and New Orleans was captured by federal troops on April 25, 1862. Because a large part of the population had Union sympathies, the federal government took the unusual step of designating the areas of Louisiana under federal control as a state within the Union, with its own elected representatives from the U.S. Congress. So if you refer to my PowerPoint presentation, you will see a state flag of Louisiana, and as you can see their state birds, and the slogan is Union, Justice, and Confidence. And this was the flag that Louisiana adopted following their entry into the United States as the 18th state. So moving on, I'll speak a little bit about Louisiana culture and customs. And before I begin, I'd like you to refer to my PowerPoint presentation, and you will see a picture of the French Quarter in New Orleans. And they're basically row houses on Royal Street. The first with front entrance in the English style, and the next two with carriage ports are French, and the entrance is up the alley. So this is one of the many very rustic, beautiful pieces of architecture, very unique to New Orleans, as well as the greater part of Louisiana that I myself experienced in the French Quarter. So, to go further into Louisiana's culture and customs, Louisiana is home to many distinct cultures, most notably the Louisiana Creole people and the French Cajun. The ancestors of the Creoles came to Louisiana before the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 from Western Europe, Germany, France, Spain, and from Senegal, which is West Africa, and settled along the majority of the waterways in the state. The blending of these disparate lifestyles combined and formed a lifestyle called Creole, and continued as the dominant lifestyle until well into the 20th century, when Anglo-American culture began to dominate Louisiana. So the ancestors of the other group of ethnic people that I mentioned are Cajuns, and Cajuns are Acadians, which are essentially French-speaking people, which now reside in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, which is in Canada, of course. And when the British won the French, and the French won the Indian War, the British forcibly separated families and evicted them because of their long-stated political neutrality. So as a result, most captured Canadians were placed in internment camps in England and as well as various New England colonies. And many of those who escaped the British remained in French Canada, but once freed by England, they scattered about various regions, and most notably, or largely, Louisiana, which is why there's so many Cajuns or Acadians in the region. So until the 1970s, Cajuns were actually considered lower-class citizens, and it was considered a very derogatory term to be considered a Cajun. So, but once flushed with oil and gas riches, Cajun culture, food, and music, and their infectious joie de vivre, basically gained international acclaim in Louisiana, and now Cajun culture is very well respected and very well recognized as a part of Louisiana. So to continue on, I will refer you to Louisiana Arts and Entertainment. So before I get into Louisiana Arts and Entertainment, I'd like to tell you a little bit about it. So probably the single most famous style of music to originate from Louisiana is jazz, but it's also known as Dixieland, and it's more specifically originating from New Orleans. And you can finally find the best type of jazz there is, and it came into being in around 1900, and early blues, ragtime, and marching band music were combined with collective improvisation to create a new style of music, which is known as Dixieland jazz. And the early style was exemplified by bands such as musicians such as Freddie Keppard and Jelly Roll Morton. And the next generation took a young art form into more daring and sophisticated directions, including Louis Armstrong, which is a name you may be very familiar with. So to demonstrate the type of Dixieland jazz I'm talking about, I'd like you to listen to a small clip of some Dixieland jazz, and that's called A La Bosse by Billy and Dee Dee Pierce. So that was a short clip of A La Bosse by Billy and Dee Dee Pierce, and that's basically demonstrates the type of jazz that I'm talking about, Dixieland jazz. And if you noticed, the title of the song A La Bosse is actually derived from French, and you can notice that Billy and Dee Dee were actually speaking French, which is part of the Creole culture in Louisiana. So to talk a little bit more about Louisiana arts and entertainment, one of the most notable things about Louisiana is that they have crazy and very fun festivals, and one of their most famous festivals is a festival called Mardi Gras, or Fat Tuesday, which is largely famous in New Orleans. And it's one of the most famous carnival celebrations in the world. The New Orleans carnival season, with roots in the Catholic season of Lent, starts on the 12th night, which is January 6th. And the season of parades, balls, and king cake parties begins on that date. But from approximately 2 weeks before, through Fat Tuesday, there is at least one major parade each day. And the largest and most elaborate parades take place on the last 5 days of the season. In the final weeks of the carnival, many events, large and small, occur throughout New Orleans and the surrounding communities. So if you refer to my PowerPoint presentation, I've compiled a brief collage or montage of Mardi Gras events. So just please take a look. So we're going to move on to Louisiana cuisine. Let me tell you a bit about it first, before I show you some pictures of the delicious food. So Louisiana cuisine is most notable by a Creole style, which is a style of cooking originating in Louisiana, of course, but specifically centered on the greater New Orleans area. And that blends French, Spanish, French Caribbean, African, and American influences. And it also bears hallmarks of Italian cuisine as well. And it's vaguely familiar to Cajun cuisine in ingredients, but the important distinction between Cajun and Creole food is that Cajun cuisine arose from more rustic, provincial French cooking, adapted by Acadians to Louisiana ingredients, whereas the cooking of the Louisiana Creoles, it tended more towards classical European styles that adapted to local foodstuffs. So if you refer to my PowerPoint presentation, you will see a picture of Louisiana cuisine, and if you notice the Creole food, it's made largely of rice, pasta, various seafood. It's very heavy, but also very, very fulfilling, if I say so myself. So I'm going to go a bit more into the cuisine. And I'd like to tell you actually a little bit of the places that I went in Louisiana to eat, or specifically New Orleans. And the first such place is called Acme Oyster House in New Orleans. And it offers marvelous ambiance, fresh seafood from Louisiana, and it's been open since 1910. And if you refer to my PowerPoint, you will see photos of the place I went, Acme Oyster House. And there's two photos, if you refer to my PowerPoint, of Acme Oyster House. The one on the left is an outside shot, and the one on the right is an inside shot of the place. A very cozy place, very friendly people, and they serve various fried foods, po' boy, seafood, just various foods such as that, local foodstuffs. And other such places I went to include the Bubblegum Shrimp Factory, and Bubblegum Shrimp Company, and if you're familiar with the movie Forrest Gump starring Tom Hanks, the restaurant's actually modeled after this particular movie. And if you remember a character named Bubba in the movie, he said he wanted to make a Bubblegum Shrimp Company, and in fact they made it in Louisiana or New Orleans. And it features down-home decor reminiscent of Alabama, which is where the movie takes place. And there's also a place that I went to, which I highly suggest you go, is the original Café du Monde. And you might be familiar with various other Café du Mondes around the world, but this one's the original one, and it's also in New Orleans. And it's kind of a traditional take on a cafe, but it serves its most famous type of food, which is called beignets, and it's a type of donut covered in lots of powdered sugar. And it also sells iced coffee as well, which is quite delicious, so I highly suggest you go there. So moving on to one of the most important aspects of my segment today is Louisiana social issues. And before I go into that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So Louisiana is also often affected by tropical cyclones, and is very vulnerable to strikes by major hurricanes, especially the low area in and around the New Orleans area. And the area is also prone to frequent thunderstorms, especially in the summer. And the entire state actually averages 60 thunderstorms per year, which averages more than any other state in the United States, with the exception of Florida. And Louisiana also averages 27 tornadoes annually, and the entire state is vulnerable to a tornado strike. So some notable hurricanes include Hurricane Katrina, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. It was very devastating, and it occurred on August 29th, 2005. It was Category 3 hurricane at landfall, and it struck and devastated southeastern Louisiana, while damaging levees in New Orleans, flooded the city. And the city was virtually closed until October, and it's estimated that more than 2 million people perished or were in the Gulf region were displaced by the hurricane, and more than 1,500 people perished as fatalities in Louisiana alone. But there was a lot of contention and a lot of controversy regarding this particular hurricane, because a lot of people were critical of the local, provincial, and or state and federal governments for not being either fast or efficient enough to save the people there. So I compiled for you a PowerPoint picture slide of Hurricane Katrina, if you refer to my PowerPoint again. So I'm going to start it now, so please take a look.
Here along the Gulf Coast is catastrophic. There's a frantic effort underway tonight to find survivors. There are an uncounted number of the dead tonight. People are being forced to live like animals.
People need to send stuff in here. We are desperate.
No one says the federal government is doing a good job.
So another hurricane, in addition to Hurricane Katrina, that was very devastating was a hurricane called Hurricane Betsy, which struck Louisiana on September 9th, 1965. And it was Category 3 at landfall as well, and it came ashore in Louisiana, causing massive destruction, being the first hurricane in history to cause $1 billion in damage. And if you adjust that to account for inflation, that's actually over $10 billion US today. And the storm hit New Orleans particularly hard by flooding the city and pushing the death toll of the state to 76 people. Although that's not nearly the same amount as the 1,500 in Hurricane Katrina, that's still very devastating. So on that sad note, unfortunately, that concludes my segment for today. I hope you enjoyed watching the show, and please feel free to visit the sites that I've listed on my sources page. If you refer to my PowerPoint, you will see my various sources. The first one being Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, and 4 to 40. So I'd like to thank the following people: my family and Joseph. And yeah, if you like to send me any comments, please send it to anita.y.lee@gmail.com. And I'd be more than willing to take any comments, any criticisms. I'm open to anything because I'm always open for improvement. And thank you for joining me. This is Footprints for Toronto TV. My name is Anita Lee. I'm your host. And please join me for my next episode. Thank you very much. Good night.